Great. Okay, the recording is starting. So, welcome to today's coffee and chat session, organized by the Community Engagement Forum. And I always start by just introducing the Community Engagement Forum quickly. We are a global community of practice that focus on engaging displaced communities in humanitarian responses. We are part of the global CCM cluster, and we're open to practitioners from any cluster or sectoral background, any humanitarian or development practitioner who is interested in learning more about community engagement. And just as a bit of background for today's session that we call the Debunking Myths, Community Engagement through Local Organizations. I mean, we've obviously been talking about this in the sector for a very long time, but it's been come more to the forefront now, and then after the humanitarian reset has started being discussed. Because we noticed that funding disappeared, but local organizations, they kept going. They kept working when we, and I work for NRC, as international organizations, international agencies, when we couldn't keep working, they kept going. And it brought on the urgent questions of how can we support local organizations in their community engagement activities to ensure sustainability of community engagement and accountability to affected populations, which is what we want to achieve with community engagement. And it also made us ask ourselves, should we aim to hand over all community engagement activities to local organizations? If so, how and why? So in this session, first of all, we will focus on local organizations' community engagement work specifically, although a lot of the myths that we are aiming to debunk through our fantastic experts will be relevant for more aspects of local organizations' work. We'll focus the questions and everything on community engagement specifically. And just to let you know, we'll also discuss the role of local organizations, specifically in internal displacement context. So refugee context and the role of local and refugee-led organizations, it will be quite different in refugee responses. But today, all our experts and discussions will be from IDP responses specifically. So this is why we haven't invited anyone from RLOs, from refugee-led organizations, to speak today. Just for structure of the session, I'll give all the experts a chance to speak before we open up for questions from the participants. So if you have any questions, you can add them to the chat, and I'll go first to the questions in the chat, and then you can raise your hand as well later on. Noor, do you want to explain anything about the polls in the chat? You're muted.
Hello again, everyone. It's good to see you all. We're trying out this new poll thing that you will see popping up on your Teams app. Yeah, I hope you interact with it and you find it interesting as we go. There will be questions that we would encourage you to answer along the way. So we would make sure everyone is engaged and interacted with the content. And let us know if you have any comments at the end, because it's something new. We're testing it just now with you. Yeah, enjoy the webinar.
Thanks, Noor. So I'll start by briefly introducing the experts, and then I'll give you a chance to say a little bit more about who you are and the work that you do when I start asking you a little bit more in-depth questions. I will introduce Yirga. He's trying to connect. Like I was saying, he's based in a region of Ethiopia that's very low internet connection. But he's trying. So Yirga Gebregziabher from OSSHD, which is the Organization for Social Service, Health and Development. It's a national organization managing 47 IDP camps in Ethiopia and 11 area-based approach community centers. So hopefully he'll be able to join us soon. And we have Myles with us today. He's waving at us there. Myles is the founder of Bike Scouts, which is the first true Filipino-led social platform for social teamwork, or, and I will try pronouncing this, Bayanihan, which is a Filipino word that means people helping each other solve local challenges in their own community. And we have Nimo Hassan. Her camera isn't working, but she's here with us. She is the director of the Somalia NGO Forum, which is a mixed national and international NGO forum. And hopefully also Maksym, I will let him pronounce his last name, will be able to join us from the National Network of Local Philanthropy Development in Ukraine. He's traveling today, so which is why he's having some problems also connecting. I don't know if you're familiar with this network of local philanthropy. They were part of publishing a couple of open letters to the international humanitarian community and donors with recommendations on how to support rather than get in the way of local organizations' work a couple of years ago. So the reason why we've invited these experts here today is, I mean, there's a lot of literature on both how and why to localize and decentralize community engagement activities. There's more and more emerging literature now, both from local actors and from international actors. But we're still not doing it. We as a sector, as the aid sector. And what's stopping us? What's stopping the localization of community engagement? There's a lot of kind of unsaid assumptions that are still lingering, I think, in the sector. And one of them is the alleged corruption risk. And I want to start by asking Myles, are local organizations more susceptible to corruption risks than international organizations? Because local community members, they have the same financial struggles, right, as the project beneficiaries. They're living among them, they could be their neighbors. Can we really trust that they have inclusive and uncorrupted and fair community engagement activities?
That's actually a very, very good question to start with. I can answer this based on our experience with the Bike Scouts community. So Bike Scouts is a nationwide organization of, well, I guess you could call us volunteers. So as of now, the members of the community, our community that I've met throughout the past 11 years are around 100,000 volunteers all over the Philippines. So we are in every major city and town. We're in every village around the Philippines, which is why every time a disaster happens anywhere in the Philippines, we usually get real-time video or photo documentation or monitoring. That's the benefit of what we do. So in terms of like, can we be trusted to do our own thing, to be supported and do our own thing? With the Bike Scouts, we're sort of like a unique case because we've never actually pursued sort of like funding from the outside. Our idea was that the community itself would be able to support whatever it is that we do. And we learned, of course, over the past 11 years that it's a real struggle to do that because we're just ordinary people. I'm not a wealthy person. None of us are rich people. So the thing that sort of like I want to say guarantee that we are self-policing when it comes to that is because we work for our own families. We work for our own neighbors. At least in the context of the Philippines, it's very difficult to abuse anything because then it would be your own family, your own neighbors, your own friends who would call you out. And that's exactly what happens here in the Philippines, which is different, of course, if you work with government. In government, guaranteed, there's corruption. That's almost a guarantee. But when it comes to the community, I can give you a concrete example. During the pandemic, for example, someone in Quezon City, one of the major cities here in the Philippines, put a table in front of her house, and then all of the spare like supplies, food, anything, they put on that table, including her neighbors, and they just put up a sign that said, "Take what you need, and if you have anything to share, just leave it on the table." Nobody stole anything, and it worked throughout the pandemic because we had one of the most severe lockdowns in the world. So people lost their jobs, couldn't support their own families, and that's how people survive. Just by putting stuff on tables in every corner, so that those who needed it could get it. And but this is not a unique case that's unique to the COVID pandemic, because for example in Batanes Island, which is closer to Taiwan actually than northern Luzon, which is the main island here in the Philippines, that practice is actually rooted in like community relationships. Whenever because they're a community that catches fish from the Pacific Ocean, anything extra that they can't use, they put on a table outside their home and then just with a sign that says, "Take what you need." That's it, and nobody takes anything more than that. And that's something that's done in almost everything, even in the work that we do as a community platform. So our registration with the government is a nonprofit, but actually Bike Scouts is more of a platform for the community, a platform for ordinary people like myself to do extraordinary good for others. And again, as you mentioned earlier, it's bayanihan. So bayanihan is basically for the longest time, ever since there have been Filipinos, it's something that we do. For example, if I run out of sugar, if I run out of rice, I could just walk over to my neighbor and ask for some, and they would give me what I need. They wouldn't expect for anything in return. No, nothing. It's just something that you do. It's instinctive. So that's something that we hope to share. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, those are great examples, and I'm sure it resonates with so many people when they start thinking about their own local communities. About, oh yeah, this could happen in my community as well, and it starts really connecting with how communities have been functioning for so long before international organizations came. I think, Yirga, you managed to join us, and I want to hear if you have anything that you want to add to what Myles was saying.
Yes, I'm very sorry for being late. The connection was very poor.
No problem. I introduced you briefly, but please, you can tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, my name is Yirga. I'm from Tigray, Ethiopia. As a regional manager for Organization for Social Service, Health and Development. Before the war on Tigray, our organization was working on development. So we are much development oriented. But because of the crisis in 2020 November, we were forced to change our day-to-day activity into emergency response. OSSHD, my organization, is founded in a very core principle saying community has a capacity to identify problem, but not only a capacity to identify a problem, even to put solution to that problem. This is our pillar. This is our foundation. And during the crisis in November 2020, that was exactly what happened. When the IDP, the people start arriving to the city from the rural area that the war is started, we were the one who respond through mobilizing the community to host the people who are displaced. People were ran to save their life in a very empty hand. They had no clothes, they had no food, they had nothing in their hand when they arrived. I'm not talking about thousands, it's 100,000 people. They came for safety and shelter. And the community hosted them. The community was the first respondent in providing them clothes, in providing them the ready-to-eat food for the new arrival, facilitated by local partners like our organization. We converted school into IDP site in consultation with the community to shelter the IDPs arriving in Magala, the city that I live. And we practically witnessed that community has a capacity to respond. That's the basic pillar we establish ourselves. The big elephant, I'm sorry for the word, but the big elephant, the UN agencies, the international NGOs arrived because the big elephant is difficult to work fast because of the bureaucracy. So they are not able to arrive on time when the people are in a serious need. But till they came, who responded effectively? The local partners in the community were mobilized by the local partners. So if someone doubting the capacity of local partners in mobilizing the community, they should visit us. There are a number of
Hello, Yirga. Yirga, we lost you just when you said there's a number of... Yirga, we can't hear you anymore. Oh, I was very excited to hear what he had to say. Yirga? Sorry, I'm just writing to him here.
agencies that we can provide.
Hello,
Do you
Yirga?
know there are 1.2 million people displaced, and after how the other trusted part
Yirga? Yirga, we're losing you.
Hello?
Hello? Yirga?
Hello?
Hello? I think we lost you and we were catching up on the... Yirga? Can you hear us? Okay, I'm gonna... I have a side conversation on WhatsApp here with him. I hope he can come back to us and continue. But in the meantime, I have more questions. Because specifically also in internal displacement situations, there can often be a lot of tension between communities, between different backgrounds, between different tribes and religious background, people from different locations with different resources. So there's a lot of questions around local organizations. Like, are they able to be impartial and neutral in their response? If they come from certain backgrounds as well. Nimo, I want to direct this question to you. Do you think that local organizations can really be deliver neutral and impartial responses?
Thank you very much, Kristin, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Nimo Hassan. I am the director of the Somalia NGO Consortium, which is a platform made up both international and national NGOs. I'm also the current chairperson of the ICFO board, so I wear a number of hats. But in today's conversation, I'll be wearing the local hat. I'm talking about the local perspective, also community perspective, but also local NGOs who are our members, and the various conversations that I have with many of them. Just before I go back to your question, I really wanted to just say that a lot of what's been said resonates with us and with the Somali community, especially on what the experience from the Philippines and how communities themselves are the ones who are helping each other to start with. Very welcoming, supporting each other. And I think with the Somali community, with displacement that is not only internal but also global, the diaspora plays a big role in supporting communities, and they are the ones who are supporting the individual families, but sometimes also when there is a bigger need in a particular area, communities get together and support those areas. And then also, through the Islamic religion, there is also sort of an obligation to support your neighbor, your kingship within your locality. So I think a lot of those cultural religious beliefs play a big role on having the responsibility to support communities when there is a need. So I just wanted to underline that is very similar of what's happening in the Philippines as well. And then on the issue of corruption, I think corruption, it doesn't really matter whether you're international, national, CBO, or a UN agency. Corruption can happen. I think it's a human bias, it's human nature. So this belief that local NGOs are more susceptible to being corrupted, I think that is absolutely a myth. It happens at the local level, it happens at the international level, it can happen anywhere. So it's more of a risk that affects all of us, depending on whatever organization that we work for. So not only a local problem, it's a system problem, it's a human problem. Now, as my colleague from Philippines was saying, the communities, the local NGOs are part and parcel of the community. So there is a legitimacy in their presence, in their delivery, in the way the community hold each other accountable. But with that said, the perception also plays against the local NGOs because they're part of the community, because they belong to certain groups. They have social ties and clan affiliations and are exposed to local politics. That's where the perception comes in. But that's also a strength in how they deal with these perceptions as well, and the legitimacy within the communities. Now, coming back to your question on whether local NGOs could be, the neutrality and impartiality may be questioned because they might belong or affiliate with one community over the other. I think that is it can happen in certain context, but also it can be managed within the communities because there is that trust. There is local systems of addressing these impartiality and this neutrality. You have elders and community leaders, and as long as you, as a local NGO, as long as you're applying the existing systems to allocate resources, then you're a lot more safer than being unbiased. In the Somali context, it's the IDPs. We have the biggest caseload of IDPs, and you know, recently there was a UN report that published, you know, that the response, especially in the 2022-2023 drought, that there were elements of diversion, post-aid delivery diversion, which means, you know, there are gatekeepers because the government does not necessarily own the land of where the IDPs are. So maybe there are gatekeepers, there are other elements of local forces that are also in the same plight, in the same position, in the same social standing, in the same cost of living, basically saying the same level as the communities that are being served. So sometimes these do happen where they want to also be provided these support because their family are also hungry. And I think there are ways of managing that and ways of managing those expectations. And it has to be with dialogue, with engaging the government, with engaging the local authorities, with making sure that people are actually aware and understand the intention of the support and who is intended for. So sometimes, you know, sometimes these biases are out there, and these perceptions are out there, but not necessarily what happened on the ground. And I think it's good for us to all look at the context specific, and rather than painting the same brush with everybody in the same locality. Maybe there are elements of the local partners that may not be able to be partial or neutral because of the nature of the conflict that's happening in that locality. Then those are, you know, are working with one particular community and not the other. But there are bigger national organizations that have robust systems, that are implementing large portfolios, that are subject to scrutiny in their accountability and risk management systems. So I think the bias is also painting everybody with the same brush. Not all national, local NGOs are in the same level of capacity, same level of robust systems. And I think we really need to define and see what we can expect from, you know, there has to be various level of ranges of local partners as well, and look at the way they work together. There's also a need to understand that context really well as an international NGO, as an outsider, for you to be able to assess properly on whether there is a, you know, lack of impartiality or neutrality from a specific local partner. So maybe just to quickly summarize, you know, to answer the question, can they be impartial and neutral? Absolutely, yes. Yes, they can be, and many of them are. Because they're using those local, you know, they're trusted by the community. In displacement context, they're often first to respond, they're the last one to leave, they know their language, they know their culture. So many, many, many things that I could underline why they can be all of these things. So the challenge is, the real challenge is not their trustworthiness, it's where the humanitarian system is ready to trust. You know, the humanitarian system is ready to trust differently, to put resources and decision-making and leadership on the hands of those closest to the community, while INGOs, UN and donors play an enabler role rather than a gatekeeping. And there needs to be a gatekeeping in terms of resources, and there needs to be more equitable partnerships and really put in the localization, ground bargain agreements in place, not theoretical, not in theory, but absolutely in place and rooted in the system that we're working on. I think some of the things that we're grappling with now in terms of this humanitarian reset is the power dynamics remain the same. So a lot of these cuts are happening at the local level, at the community level. So looking at the cost rather than looking at the impact. And if we bring it back to to the community engagement, and how do we engage that? Who is the best place to engage? Are those who are part and parcel of the community, who are the ones to first respond. So if it's a genuine dialogue, I don't think anything could go wrong. But let me stop here. I think I've taken too much of the time. Back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you so much, Nimo. Not at all. I could listen to you speak for ages. There's so many good points here about, I mean, the national organization, national and local organizations are not a monolith. They all have different levels of capacity to engage, and they're not the only ones who want any bias. These problems, we should be debunking myths, all over, across international NGOs and UN agencies, of course, as well. But the myths are not about us. I keep saying us because I work for an international organization. Sorry. But I see that Maksym, you've managed to join us. Maksym, I briefly introduced you before you were here, but maybe you can give a little background about yourself and your organization, and if you have anything that you want to add to the discussion around whether local organizations are more corrupt and less able to implement neutral and impartial community engagement activities, please let us know.
Yes, hello. I'm very sorry for being late. I'm just on a work trip and it was hard to find a quiet place with a stable internet. So my name is Maksym. I'm from Ukraine. I'm representing National Network of Local Philanthropy Development. Our main goal and scope of work is the development of community foundations of Ukraine. So we're an umbrella organization that trying to bring everything with community foundations and what they need to grow. We have different directions where we work and what we work with them, like youth, agro projects, advocacy projects, pool funds. I think mainly that's it, and everything what community foundations can ask for. And speaking of the topic that was raised about the corrupted organization, I think we were discussing it recently that it's becoming quite annoying that no matter what we're doing, no matter how hard we're trying, how many reports and how many systems we're establishing, there still will be always mistrust towards us and saying that there is a chance of corruption and it's better to give to someone bigger with whom we already cooperated or who simply has a name worldwide. So honestly, at this point, I think that it's really not about the problem of corruption, but just the problem of perception of the organization and people they're working with in them. So I think right now it's just a moment when I think currently I think in our dialogue when some other organization, international or donors are writing this question, we're saying that it's a problem of your perceiving. We're ready to show you all the reports and everything we've done, and we're not ready to change more because we already did everything that we think we should have done. And I think it started to work, when we were saying like, no, we're not going again to make 10 or I don't know, few months of your different procedures to prove you that we're not corrupt. It's you who have to change and to have to accept that the world is not going to circle around you. And first, I think it was scary, but we started to have this approach, I think, from 22 when the war came to Ukraine, and we realized that some things has to be changed in the international system and that we sometimes just need to say no, and it started to work. So I understand that, I guess, for a lot of local organizations who are not, I guess, big, for example, in the scope of Ukraine as our organization, maybe for them it's scarier, and because they can lose this very valuable and very important support when they say no. But I think it's very important role for an organization like ours who has a stronger voice and more connections to talk about this. So I think, of course, just to summarize, there is always will be risk. There's always will be risk that on the top level and the best organization, the best firms with the best procedures, there will be a corruption, and same as on the local level. Can I say that local organizations are more corrupt? I don't think so. I faced a lot of moments when local organizations, to ensure donors or international organizations of their trustworthy, would involve, say, their private money just to get this trust. And I rarely heard the stories that some of them broke this trust or disappeared with a bag of money somewhere. So yeah, I think this is it for what I can add to it.
Thank you so much, and thanks for making all these efforts to join us from in the middle of your journey. Yirga, great you managed to connect again. Please, if you would like to continue what you were saying earlier.
No. I want to put some point on the corruption issue. So I think any individual who clearly know about the nature of corruption can say two things. One, corruption has no color, has no entity that can be located into organizations. Corruption is a nature of corrupted individuals. It's about people. And people are individuals. So leveling local organization to corruption is one of the big mistake that the international organization assume. But the most difficult thing to corrupt in local community and in local organization is to commit corruption, because we know each other. The community knows us, we know the community. So even we were told that if in any distribution local partners are involved, there will be less corruption even by those who are receiving the support, because we know each other, who is doing what, we know, and we have faces. So it's very difficult to be corrupted. It's easy to be traced. It is easy to be identified when you do some wrong things in your response. So we are much serious than other organizations in terms of corruption. But leveling local organization to this level, it's not logical, and it's a behavior of individuals, and local partner staff can do, international NGO staff can do, UN agency staff can do, based on their behavior. It's individual nature. It's not organizational, and there is no nationality for corruption. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Excellent points, Yirga, and thanks for mentioning them. Raphael, you raised your hand. I see a lot of comments in the chat, but no questions. So I'm gonna leave the floor for Raphael to ask a question.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I believe you can hear me.
Yes.
So what I want to highlight is just to pick up from what our previous speaker just mentioned, because I think it's important to look at the brighter side. Surprisingly, this discussion is coming through the corruption aspect, which this is not actually the point I am viewing this from. I think we can better have a good modality in our approach of how to engage with the local partners, and then it is case by case. So which means for me, I'm looking at how to better come out with strategy whereby we can have maybe a close coaching or a modality of engaging the partner within a strategic period of time, and then not give the full 100% ownership from the start, but we can start as a pilot to work closely with the partner. I think most important thing is about clarity on communication, on what the organizations want, what are their do's and what are their don't, and then the partner is fully aware of this. And then the organization has a responsibility, because for me, I feel like if an organization engage a local partner and then the local partner has issue of corruption, then I think from the aspect of the organization also, they should be held accountable at certain level, because the monitoring tools that were put in place maybe were not properly followed or were not properly coordinated at that level. So for me, it's a good thing to look at how partners, local organizations can come in, because it gives the opportunity to bring the response to at the local level. Because of course the community can easily be involved, because these are the people that have maybe suffered the same concern the community members have, and it gives this a high level of acceptance, and they can also be able to work easily with the community, eliminating the language barriers and the cultural sensitivities and all that. So for me, I think it's good that we are having this discussion. So I just have this few reflections from what the previous colleagues have highlighted. Thank you, and over to you, Christine.
Thanks, Raphael. Thanks a million. Myles, would you like to comment on this? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add something. This is not like my personal opinion, but because we've been having this discussion in our own community among our team leaders for the longest time, and usually we don't talk about this publicly. We try to keep this internally. But for every question about credibility, about corruption, about everything else that the international system has for local organizations or initiatives, to tell you the truth, the local initiatives also have the same questions for the international system and international organizations. A very concrete example of this is that the fact that most of the team leaders of the Bike South are actually coming from leadership positions from international NGOs. And they quit. They quit because they were dissatisfied, they were frustrated, they saw how the system works, and they seriously thought that this is not how we can solve problems. And this is not coming from me. This is coming from our team leaders who used to work from INGOs. A good example of this is this. During last year, we had 7 consecutive typhoons here in the Philippines, including 3 Category 5s, which caused like widespread damage. And instead of asking for help from international NGOs or from funders or other organizations, we did things ourselves. We don't have any money, but we somehow managed to do that. And where we could not provide for the needs of the local community that we were serving during these severe floods. A good example is one of our team leaders in Naga City, which is in Bicol province in the Philippines, used his own home to house people who had nowhere to go, because there were no more evacuation centers available. Because the evacuation centers here in the Philippines are actually built on the worst plots of land, because they're donated because nobody wants them, because they're the most prone to disasters, to flooding especially. So the reality is that a lot of these evacuation centers eventually also got flooded, and people had to evacuate from the evacuation center, so they had nowhere to go. And so what the Bike South leaders in those affected areas did was they opened up their homes, and people, like complete strangers, stayed inside their homes, in the hallways outside their apartments. And we somehow managed to put together our own money from our own grocery and rent money. A lot of us weren't able to pay for our electric bills, for our internet, and even our rent, because we gave all of this money so that the people, and we're doing that right now, by the way, for another disaster, so that we could provide food and shelter and clothing for the people that we were serving in the communities where there were Bike Scouts. So one question that always crops up is that we're always sort of like asked if we're credible enough, because we do certain things based on local context. Because there are a lot of, and you guys are probably familiar with this, that there are a lot of like small undeclared problems that we need to solve. We need to deal with on the ground every single moment of every single day. And that's why we sometimes have to sort of like deviate from checklists and plans, because we need to do those things. And one question that our team leaders ask is that, and the reason why they left is because in the international system, they have fleets of SUVs, they have big offices staffing, they have salaries, they have allowances for travel. But these are things that we do not have. And so we have to find a way to sort of like do our job in the same way that people in the international system have to do their job with all of the resources that they need. So that's the difference. And the question is that just because the international system declares that they are using these resources for all of these things that have nothing to do with disaster response, for example, is that better than the things that local organizations have to do because they actually need to do them locally on the ground? So yeah, I hope that's something that's useful moving forward.
I think that's an excellent question. Nimo, you raised your hand if you want to comment on this conversation, and then Maksym, and then Feda.
Yeah, just a couple of things, and I apologize. I have to drop off very soon. I'm honestly listening to Myles. I'm like nodding my head, and it's really inspirational to listen to you, Myles. You're fantastic in the way you're delivering and the examples you're giving. Absolutely agree everything you said. There are questions everywhere, and there are perceptions on both sides. So it's easy. I think it's easier for human beings just to make perceptions from what they don't know, right? Rather than getting to know, investing time, looking at it from an honest and open and frank perspective. So I think in both ways there needs to be more dialogue. Now, coming back to your main question on local NGOs, I know is a provocative question. Can local organizations be trusted to lead on community engagement in internal displaced context? I mean, who else would lead that? It has to be the local NGOs. It has to be those who are part and parcel of the communities. It has to be those who understand the context. It has to be those who actually, what you said, Myles, that there's a lot of challenges that you have to resolve on a day-to-day basis when you engage in the communities. Sometimes there are perceptions and misinformation that goes out into the community, which is not part of your plan, and you just have to go out and sit with people and talk to people you need to talk with to try and address it. So they are the right people to engage communities. Now, I'm not saying that every single context is the same and every single local or national NGOs are the same. The same way international NGOs are very diverse and human beings are very diverse. But we cannot get away from engaging the community through our local partners. And there are local and structures that already exist when we engage in these things. Things don't have to be invented just because there is an international organization or a humanitarian response that wants to support communities in a particular locality. So using those local systems, understanding those local systems, not eroding them, not replacing them something that can't work, but enhancing them and supporting them to be able to do that, right? I don't think it's come up yet, but the question of capacity is always raised as an issue as an issue for local partners not having the capacity to deliver, whether it's technical or whether it's human resource. What we need to understand is that capacity building is not static. It's not something you do one time. It's a constant dialogue and engagement. It's providing the necessary support and resources for them to be able to get to a place. I mean, INGOs have a more robust, in most of national NGOs, because they have the resources to put those systems in place, to hire those technical people who are able to do this, to do so. And then, but when giving contracts to local partners, it has to be cheap, right? So it has to be cheap. You keep the cost. You can't do this, and the power dynamics I mentioned earlier. So if the response is cheap, then you're gonna have to expect some shortcomings and shortcuts and things are not covered fully. So we really need to be, like I said, honest and frank. The intention is for all of us, whether it's local or international, community level, UN, is to support communities in need. So if we really see each other as partners, equitable partners, then I think we can overcome a lot of these challenges that we all face and not only local NGOs. Really, thank you very much for having me. I'm going to have to drop off now, but wonderful conversation, and thanks very much for sharing your insights. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Nimo. Thanks a million for joining us, and yeah, for all your excellent examples and insights, and yeah, it's been a pleasure. Maksym, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yes, I just wanted to add and to say to Myles that I really understand. And I'm very sorry for this problem that I have to deal with the floods. And I have to say that we had almost the same problem because once we recently, I think about a year or maybe a year and a half ago, Russians exploded a big dam and thousands of houses were flooded. A lot of people were dying. And what we did, we started to gather resources and we reached out to one very big and very famous institution. And we said to them, hey, we need this, this, and that. We're gathering resources. Every minute doesn't count. Can you please help us? And they answered us in such a horrible way, saying like, we have a procedure that we have to follow. We can't give you the answer now. We'll come back to you in a few weeks or something. When literally we were getting the information requests every, I think, hour. And so we came to them with very specific list of needs that we gathered through our community foundation on the local level, and community foundation asked of the special services. So we knew perfectly what is happening there and what needs to be delivered. And the funniest part, that after we already dealt with everything and months passed, they reached out to us and said like, hey, do you still need it? And so they bought everything what we needed months ago, and now there is no need for it and money already spent, and it will just be dusting on the storage. And I think I remember it raised a question among our team that in some way you can't call it a corruption, but also like, what the point of it? This money we can use in such a better way. People already lost their lives, and maybe it could save so much more and give so much more. And now the things will be just dusting there, and no one is going to have any responsibility in front of anyone for doing that. And that's also that I remember that I didn't mention one thing, that I think that also there is a need to have in every country such institution that will be kind of a court between local organizations and international organizations. Currently, we're trying to establish one because, for example, we're talking about corruption in local organizations, but recently we got a request from local organization that were basically, I don't know how to say, the international organization told them that we'll give you part of the money, but we ask you to invest 20% of your own money, which they did. And they promised them that in the end of the project, they will give this money back, this 20% that they invested of their own money. And they didn't do it. And now they're trying to leave them without this quite big resource by coming up with different, very creative reasons why not. And we did our research and we involved a lot of people, and we know that this is not true, what this international organization is trying to tell us. And for example, what to do, what in this situation we can do, how we can negotiate between this local organization and the international organization, when it's clearly that in this case is the international organization who is corrupt and who is trying not to follow the agreement that they made. And so I think that also what is very important to make these discussions and make this problem less and more solvable is to actually create something or someone who will be in the middle, independent, and can help either, for example, for international organizations or donor when they come to the country to check through this institution if they can trust to this local organization. And same for the local organization, in case of something happening, if they can come to them and, for example, start the case, start the court, or ask for advice or for some support. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maksym. Well, it's really very interesting learning everything that is going on from your sides. Feda, you're raising your hand. Feda is joining us from Gaza.
Yes. Hi everyone. I hope you are well. I am Fida from Gaza. I just find this topic
Feda, you're breaking up a little
very
bit.
interesting, and I wanted to share my experience. Before I joined
Feda?
an international organization, I worked with a technical experience. You can hear me?
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if you can go closer to the mic or anything.
Okay. It's okay now?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay. So I just said I wanted to share my experience with this topic. Before I joined an international organization, I worked with a local NGOs for many years, and from my experience, I witnessed like a strong implementation capacity on the ground. While some technical experience may be sometimes be limited, but there are many capable and professional local organizations, especially in contexts like the war in Gaza. Local NGOs are closer to the people, geographical and social, and also culturally, and can reach communities more effectively than anyone other. So, in fact, most of international organizations rely on them as a local partner for the project implementations. And on the other hand, when we talk about the issues such as mistrust and corruptions, I think that trust is gained from the community and beneficiaries as well as between the NGOs and donors is not like a random things, but there's like a standard, and they follow this. And with more follow up and uh, things important from my point of view is about participation. Participation, because many of concerns regarding this issue can be minimized, and from this practical experience, it's clear that engaging local organizations requires like a concrete mechanism. So maybe like a community engagement form could play important role in this by giving local NGOs more space to showcase their experience in the global sessions, also designing capacity building and uh,
We're losing you again, Freda.
let's respond. And what, Chris?
Sorry, we're losing you a little bit again.
Okay. Okay. I can finish this and share my what I say in the chat. But at the end, I think this is voices and local NGOs heed more effectively. I think this can be a good way to minimize all the issues.
Thank you. This is
We
a great
can talk about
recommendation
this. Yeah.
for us
Thank
as
you.
well. Yeah, to highlight good examples to help increasing the trust and showcase the good impact. I'm gonna give Yirga the word and then Bharat. So go ahead, Yirga.
So in terms of capacity, even the way I understand capacity is different, but I believe no international organization born or created with a capacity. They acquire capacity through experience, and because they pay well, they gather every unique mind that can serve the organization. So the local organization can do the same. Through experience, they can acquire capacity. If the international NGO and international donors permit them to have higher admin cost at their own, they can hire the best mind to implement programs. But the problem is, as if they born with a capacity, always they think they are the one who are capable to do something, and local partners, they don't. So they should open their understanding, even in the international NGO and UN agencies, the one who is implementing the program is the local staff. They are using local staff to implement their own program. If they gave us those local staff with that amount of money to hire them in our local organization, we will continue with that capacity. The like-minded, the active one, the well-educated are now in the international NGO from local organization. Even they are draining us because they paid well. So we should, voice this concern seriously by increasing our overhead cost. They should make us capable to pay well, and they should share their experience for us to build our capacity. Because it's true, local partners are effective and efficient in implementing programs when they get the necessary support, as other international NGO are getting the necessary support. Of course, they should be, I can be assure you, with no local partners' participation, even the international capacity may not fit to the local context. So the capacity concept, sometimes they make it very subjective, but for me it's very objective. It depends on ability to pay, and can be acquired through experience.
Thanks very much, Yirga. This is a great, very practical recommendation to the people and organizations that are in charge of the funds. Increase the admin cost line in the budget to local organizations. And it reminds me, I will come back to Yirga and Maksym and Myles for some concrete recommendations. But first, Bharat, you have your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon, all. I just want to echo Yirga. I remember back in 2021 when there was 360 blockade back in Tigray, and the whole federal system was our side and Tigray was the other side, and the communities were suffering, not only the displaced people, but the whole communities in total. For me, the neutrality is very condition-based or very contextual, I would say. The whole communities of one group, and then the whole communities of one region are, if they are in such condition, I don't think anyone would expect that the communities that they are being represented by such organizations would be standing with others. So having said that, it is very contextual, but I think since the organizations, they come up with the humanitarian principles, they align with the response, I think they are neutral, I would say. Most of the things that Yirga has already said, I want to echo what he was saying back in 2021 in one of the ICCG meetings in Tigray, when the UN policy did not allow to support the national NGOs. When the economic blockade was there, the staff were also suffering from food, from any kind of basic survival thing. At that time, UN decided to give some of the some of the items to their staff, but they did not decide what should be for local organization. Then Yirga said, I had seen vegetarian people eating vegetables, non-vegetarian eating non-vegetarian food, but I hadn't seen humanitarian eating humanity. So that touched everyone, and he was able to make a change that UN agencies decided to change, and the local organizations were provided the support. And this is how it has a very good and very very emotional attachment that the CCCM cluster with OSSHD actually in the context of Ethiopia. Our policy, while I was working with IOM, our policy was not allowing the local partners to work in a partnership. And then Christina, I still want to recall her. She was the one visiting in the office, and Yirga even did not have the registered books that the IDPs wanted to use it. And this is how we changed the policy and we localized. And this was the first step of localization that is started through UN in the CCCM cluster in Ethiopia. And now OSSHD is the greatest organization in terms of implementation, in terms of capacity, and in terms of technical skills as well, I can claim. Because the CCCM cluster's policy was to do the site level coordination meeting across the sites. But we were talking the same thing with same partners. Imagine 23 sites and same partner go 23 times in a month to discuss about the same thing. And why don't we think a little differently? And Yirga actually initiated that point, and we called all the IDPs from 23 sites, the representative, and we discussed in one forum. That allowed all the communities to discuss about the one comparison of the services where they are getting and where they are not. Some of the sites which were out of reach areas or hard to reach areas were facing some challenges, while the other one which were nearby without coordination, there were duplication of efforts that helped us to reduce. And then we were able to speak the same thing at the same time that minimized the time, increased our efficiency, and it enabled the accountability. And in terms of what I would say, it's like a perception, considering the local organizations, I would say we should keep our errors at bay and look with the other lenses, because when it comes to us as we want to judge anyone, or we want to decide about anyone, we become immediately judge. And when it comes to us that we need to defend, we become lawyer. So having said that, it's about all the perception that you work with. And absolutely, there are rules, regulations that are composed for follow-up, not to document only. So for me, the recognition and visibility of local organizations is the most important thing that we need to look into. While, as Yirga said, that there are bottlenecks that the local organizations cannot hire those level of technically skilled people. And the international organizations or the UN agencies have the liability and responsibility to build these skills at local level and deliver the services effectively. Just I wanted to echo on that. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's great to hear good examples as well as recommendations for what can practically be done. Which brings me to, I'll pass the word to you, Myles, as you're raising your hand, but I also want to end the session with some recommendations from yourself and also from Yirga and Maksym, if Maksym is still here yet, with some practical recommendations to the donors, to the international organizations, and to the coordinating organizations like UN agencies, and how they can better support you in your efforts, whether that is getting out of the way or give more admin funding, whatever it is. Please let us know. So Myles, please go ahead.
Thank you. I'll do this very quickly so we can move on to the recommendations. I just wanted to add on to something important that Yirga mentioned, and it's about local context. And I'm sharing this so that maybe once the participants in the forum today who are working with international NGOs, when you have conversations internally about what you can do better, this could be something. And so we've had this experience multiple times over the past 11 years. There's this one situation that happens, like it involves the system that's being sort of like imported into the communities where the NGOs work. And what happened was that after a Category 5 typhoon, of course, the system was that to ask people in the community to submit sort of like a list of like damage to their homes, so that it could be determined what kind of materials that they could be given. And so, of course, that makes sense. As a system, that makes complete sense. But because it lacks local context, what happened was that once the materials were assigned, the community members were actually shocked because the people whose houses were most damaged, they were mostly just couples. And the other community members who needed more support had kids or had elderly or had sick relatives in their homes, but they weren't qualified for the materials that they needed. And in fact, the people who were given the materials ended up giving the materials to their neighbors. Again, this can be construed as corruption or misuse of resources, but this is local context. In the Philippines, people will prioritize others who need more help. And this is completely disregarded in a system that we've seen being applied in the aftermath of disasters, at least here in the Philippines. Again, I can't speak for like the entire world, but here in the Philippines, that's what happens. And what happened eventually was that in other communities, because of this system, which again makes complete sense, what happened was that community members started having suspicion with each other. Others were thinking that maybe they had friends inside the NGO, so they were prioritized. And even relatives started fighting each other because of this system. But of course, the NGOs, they never heard of this problem. In fact, when they pulled out, they left communities that were completely in chaos. People hated each other after this specifically because of this system. And because Bike Scouts is local to we have teams in these communities, in these villages. What happened is that we needed to organize dialogues between the members of these communities, so that they could get back together again. We had to repair the relationship that used to be there in these communities that was completely destroyed because of a system that makes complete sense. So thank you.
Wow, that's not only are INGOs not supportive, but they're also creating a mess that you need to gives you extra work. Great example. Thanks for bringing all this to light, everyone. You know, there's a lot of things that that the global community doesn't see, because they're not on the ground. Myles, can I ask you to provide some recommendations, and then I'll hand over to Maksym and then Yirga.
Sure thing. Actually, my recommendation comes from my previous career. I used to work in the advertising and design industry. I used to be a creative director. So literally, my job professionally was to engage people and create communities. But that time, it was create communities around brands. So I actually do this I used to do this for a living. I used to do this professionally, which explains why the Bike Scouts has been very successful in gathering community members across the Philippines. Because we didn't go to these communities just telling them that we are your saviors, we know how to fix your problems, and you need to follow exactly what we tell you. That's not what we did. Instead, we found something that people actually love and people actually do, which is riding bicycles, whether for work, whether for fun, or for sport. That's how we started. And cycling clubs and organizations in the Philippines, including bike commuters, membership could range from 5 people to 15,000 people. And that's how we got to 100,000 volunteers across the Philippines. That's engagement. We didn't tell people to follow us. We found something that they already love, that they're already doing, that they already have something that they find a use for, and we supported that. So we followed the lead of the locals, and that's exactly still what we're doing today in everything that we do. And I'm hoping that in the future, INGOs and funders would treat us the same way, that we're not something to be assessed. We're not something to be sort of like we're not something that has to sort of like prove ourselves, because we're already doing our own thing. So what I would love to see in the future is that for us to be treated as equal partner. We have our own capability, we have our own skills, because believe it or not, even in the smallest villages in the Philippines, for example, again, just speaking for my own country, there are engineers, doctors, there are priests, teachers. We have a lot of teachers, by the way. And majority of our team leaders in the Philippines are women, actually. We didn't even know this. We didn't even notice this. We didn't do this on purpose. And, you know, all of them are professionals. All of them are qualified. A lot of them come from INGO backgrounds as well, as I mentioned. And for us, we don't understand why there's so much suspicion, why we need to prove ourselves that we're actually, at least in our minds and in the minds of the communities where we serve, we're very effective. We understand the problems that we solve because we experience them ourselves on a daily basis. That's why that's the difference between our approach and the approach of others, I guess, is that because we're not actually in advocacy. We didn't start this to change the world or save anyone. We're just basically solving problems that impact us. And I think that's value that we have, that we can bring to the table and work with INGOs and funders if INGOs and funders can sort of like find it in themselves to see us as equal partners. And I hope that's something that happens in the future. Thank you.
Very, very well said. And thank you for that recommendation. Maksym, you raised your hand.
Yes. So speaking of the recommendation, I think I'm not going to tell something very bright or new, but definitely what I want to say, that I think I have an advice that we were talking before. It's just to simply trust. But the question is how to build this trust. And recently we've did something within our network of umbrella organization. Is what we did is we went as a national office for a week to our local community foundations, and we just engaged as volunteers to help them, because we know that our community foundation not all have very big capacity, and we wanted also to bring them some different point of view, understand them better, see what they actually need, see their work from the inside. And when we went there, I was so surprised when I literally realized that people in this community foundation know everyone. And when I'm saying everyone, it's literally everyone. We were going on the road and this woman was saying hi to everyone by name. And that was like hundreds of people throughout this week. And I like that
So,
and I don't want to
has a microphone. Oh, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. And at that moment, at first, when I was there for a week, I realized better what we can do for them, how actually they are trustworthy, even though we trusted them because they are within the organization. And we understand how important and crucial they are for the community. As Myles said, that the local organizations are not corrupted because they have the responsibility and they're accountable in front of the people with whom they're living. And so my advice would be for the international donors, for everyone, is to trust. And if you want to build the trust, everyone have to make step towards each other. And my recommendation would be don't launch a big project. Just go to see the community, stay for a day or two, work together, launch something small, try to see how you're cooperating. And also sometimes what I also see is that international organizations and donors can treat, as Myles said, local organizations not equally, because people on local levels sometimes they can't formulate sentences in a very nice and fancy way. They know a lot of very bright words, but they know very practically how to do things with their hands. And sometimes you can come to them, they will create amazing projects from nothing, from the scratch, from the rocks and the wood and then sticks. But they maybe won't be able to communicate the impact that they have made, how to measure it, and what was the goal and everything. But they will still be able to do it, and they know how to do it. And I think in this cooperation, everyone can gain a lot from it, as people in international offices, international companies, as on the local level. So yeah, I think my main point would be here that everyone needs to make step towards each other, and in this way, only in this way, we can create an understanding. Because if someone is running toward you in sprint and the other one is escaping, we'll never come to a common goal and common point. Thank you today for inviting, and it was very interesting to listen to everyone and to hear the experience of everyone.
Thank you, Maksym. Thanks so much for very inspiring words. I'm going to go to Yirga first and ask him for some recommendations as well, and then to Abdallah. Oh, Yirga, you're muted.
So my recommendation, maybe 2-3 recommendations. One, the international community should translate its promise into practice. The promise is about localization. The localization should be in practice. When the international community agree in real localization, they can benefit on 3 things. One, we can do more with less. We proved this. We can do with more with less. If they are looking for cost-effective implementation, we are the best to fit. I know we are not expensive, but at the same time, I know we are not cheap. But we are not expensive as international NGO. So more money can go for program. More money can go for life-saving activities. So if they are looking for to be effective and efficient, local partners, we are there. Second, they should do their work localized as much as they can, but internationalized as it's necessary. So there should be a partnership. Let's say food distribution can be done by local partners. Food purchase can be done by international partners. So we can share responsibility and we make it effective. So making our work local as much as possible and international as it is necessity will make us more effective. And that partnership between international and local partners can be effective. The third one, my recommendation, if they are really committed, they should build our capacity. Their capacity is built based on our expertise, then they should pay back. So that's my recommendation. I don't want to take that much time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Yirga. They're excellent recommendations, and will help push them forward. Abdallah Abdurrahim, please go ahead. Oh, I saw that you unmuted yourself, but I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you. There's no sound. I don't know why I'm being unmute. Are you are you typing your question instead? Yeah. Excuse me. Would you like to type your question if you have a question to one of the experts? Anyone else? have any questions for our experts while we have them here? I'm very aware that we're going over time, but I didn't want to stop this very, very interesting conversation. So Abdul Rahim is saying that he's participating from Sudan. Please go ahead. What is your question or comment? Excuse me. I'm sorry for the lull, guys. For those of you who aren't participating by video, Abdallah is typing his question. I think. Abdallah, are you able to send messages in the chat? If not, I can't see anything in the chat. Any question? But I can see you typing. In the meantime, Tembo, please go ahead, and then we will wrap up once we manage to get something from Abdallah.
Yeah, I think maybe you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate the presenters for today for what they have done. Actually, Yirga have actually. I want to add on my voice. His point recommendable for making sure that the local actors are capacitated and also sharing responsibilities between international NGOs and local actors. And the point of also creating enabling environment for local actors to meaningfully participate, it is something that is actually seriously commendable, because the gap now is like people are not understanding localization. People are seeing it as a room for competition, and then people are like, I've seen, witness like international NGOs trying to create actually a win-lose situations where when they, for example, like in Chaka, I've seen if they have been running a women's center with a budget of maybe 20 millions, but they want to give it to a refugee-led organization with zero balance. And this we are telling them, you know, guys, I think this is not meaningful participation. However much you are giving the Women's Center to an RLO, for you, you have been running it with a big budget. But when you don't have the budget, it is when you are giving it to the RLO. That is not meaningful participation. Let us, if there is a budget, give it to the RLO to run it so that they can be capacitated. Not like when you don't have, you have, like of recent, I told them, don't give people an empty cup. Or you have taken all the juice and then you are giving someone an empty cup. So you are not actually supporting this person, but you are actually draining the person. So with the local actors, we are still advocating to make sure that there is meaningful environment for meaningful participation for local actors, where like what actually Yirga said, in situations where they are running maybe a budget, if for them they cannot do without internet, then if they are saying, okay, this activity can be run by local actors, let them provide computers, let them provide internet, because they are not in position to receive handwritten reports, and they say it is not okay, it is not appropriate. Then we're saying, okay, capacitate local actors with providing enabling tools that can actually enable meaningful participation, and local actors are going to perform well and are going to be capacitated in that way. So I think I was just adding a voice to Yirga, but also saying that what he said is much well recommendable, and it is something that we're actually continuing advocating for and making sure that the people, the duty bearer, are accountable to capacitate the local actors to make sure that the humanitarian response is actually meaningful and people are actually participating meaningfully, especially the local actors. I want to say thank you very much for the much contribution from mailers. I was hearing what he's speaking about Philippine and the approach they are using. Actually, they are actually very, very good. And I think understanding the community, which is actually the niche for the local actors, or being in these communities, we understand what they are doing. And also, even if we stay with them, but sometimes you don't have to draw programs for them. We need also to make sure that the community is involved, understanding what is relevant, especially with their needs that are in that particular community at that time. I think all the presenters for this meeting were actually awesome, and I really appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Tambo. And if I might plug, Myles is an excellent follow on LinkedIn as well. He put in the link to Bike Scouts there, if you want to learn more about the Bike Scouts as an organization, in the chat, earlier in the chat. But following him on LinkedIn as well is very educational. Yeah, I think it's responsibly. It's time to end this webinar, as we've gone 37 minutes over time. Thank you so much to everyone, of course, to Myles and Yirga and Maksym and Nimo for sharing your expertise and your experiences and your examples and recommendations. It's extremely valuable, and we'll try and do our best as the Community Engagement Forum to help showcase these good examples to try and increase this trust and break down these perceptions. The problem obviously lies with us. And thank you also to all the wonderful participants in the session for your questions and your contributions. You can also, as Noor was putting in the chat, you can sign up to our new what do we call it? No, not a newsletter, but a community update, monthly community update, to not miss out on anything that we do. It's in the chat. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for joining. That was great.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for an interesting session.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. That was fascinating.
Thanks for joining. Luca, are you raising your hand or are you waving goodbye? Giving a thumbs up. Thank you.